let me first say that this is what I was talking about when I was talking to Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers on on Monday Night Football, when we were saying, should he have gone for the 2 or should he have went to overtime? Obviously, he went to overtime. The Chiefs won the overtime toss. The Bucs never touched the ball again. Situation and circumstance, understanding it. Now, you can say the Cincinnati Bengals were wrong in going for it after scoring the touchdown, which would have put them up 1 instead of tied the game. And I'm here to say that I understand completely why Zach Taylor went for 2. And I completely support Zach Taylor and the Cincinnati Bengals going for 2 at that moment. Essentially putting the game in their own hands. You have to realize, man, every circumstance and every situation is different. I talked about this last episode. And if you look at this situation, both defenses were struggling mightily. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals did get off to a hot start, sort of. I think it was 7-0, but the time when it got up to 21-7. They had a 14-point lead. The Ravens weren't. The offense wasn't clicking. Defensively, they were having one of those defensive games. Nothing was clicking for them until Marlon Humphreys stripped the ball away from the running back. Turnover, Ravens score, I think, in 2 or 3 or 4 plays after that. That's what got the ball rolling for the Ravens. And once the ball started rolling for the Ravens, it was curtains. That 14-point lead evaporated like that. Neither defenses was stopping the offense. Joe Burrow threw for 428 yards. Jamar Chase caught 11 receptions for 264 yards. So, then on top of that, Taylon Wallace had 3 receptions for 115 yards. Lamar Jackson ran for 33 yards. Derrick Henry ran for 68 yards. Nobody was stopping anyone. And you knew that if the Cincinnati Bengals scored the touchdown, which they did, and there was still time left on the clock, the way that the Baltimore Ravens offense was going, they were not stopping that team. They may have stopped them from getting a field goal. I think there was about a minute left, 39 seconds left or something like that. You may stop them from getting in field goal range, and we did just witness Justin Tucker miss an extra point earlier in the game. But the thing is, you want to control as much as you can control. You want to keep all the controllables in your hand. And one controllable that you have is, if we give this ball back, we know that we have not been able to stop this offense since that turnover, since they got rolling. We know that our biggest hindrance on this team is the defense. So let me try our hardest to put us in the best situation possible. And the best situation possible for the Cincinnati Bengals was scoring a touchdown, which they did, and going for 2. You can have the Monday morning quarterback. You can have the people talk about, well, it didn't work and they lost the game. Okay. The thing about sports is you're never going to get to where you want to go without taking a risk. You're never going to get to the point that you're trying to get to if you're not ready or willing to risk it all. And what do you think would have been the headline if they would have went for 1, the field goal, got it, or not field goal, the extra point, they got it. Then the Ravens marched down the field in 40 seconds, get a field goal, or they go into overtime. The Ravens win the overtime toss. They don't score, or the Ravens score, not allowing the Cincinnati Bengals to touch the ball. And the way that game was going, the way how both defenses were struggling, if the Ravens would have won the toss, they would have won the game. Hands down. I know that I'm giving a lot of energy. That's because I'm not upset with Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor, in my opinion, played it right. You go for two. You win. You essentially go for this. We're going to talk about, later in the show, we're going to talk about the 76ers. And there was a play, to win the game. I don't remember. It was against the Suns. And Paul George, he goes for two, which would essentially have tied the game, and they probably would have went into overtime instead of going for the three. And he even said in his post game, I didn't understand the score. If I would have known that we were down two, I would have went for the three. You go for the win every time. That's why I had so much energy, and I was so upset with Todd Bowles. You playing it safe lost you the game. The Cincinnati Bengals played to win, and they lost. Yes, I understand, but I would do that 10 times out of 10, especially when you see the circumstance and the situation that your team is in. Which let me advance this conversation with the Cincinnati Bengals. I talked about this before, but it's really starting to come into fruition now. Joe Burrow has played like a top 5 quarterback in this league. I owe Joe Burrow an apology, because I remember a take that I had earlier on this year saying, I don't know how good. A lot of people put Joe Burrow on this pedestal, saying he's the second best quarterback, saying that he is next to Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people put Joe Burrow on this pedestal, on that tier that I believe Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson's in. It's, if you don't win a Super Bowl, it's essentially a failure. That's how good people say Joe Burrow has been. And I was pushing back on it, saying, okay, well, hold on. Joe Burrow's only been to one Super Bowl. He's only been to one AFC champion, or 2 AFC championships, essentially, and he ain't been back since. And availability is your best ability. And the fact that Joe Burrow has constantly been hurt, or his team's been in situations where they can't overcome, I was a little more critical than I should have been on Joe Burrow. For that, I do apologize, because I am not lamenting. I am saying now, I recognize how good Joe Burrow is. Joe Burrow is a top 5 quarterback in this league. I think if you put Joe Burrow behind a competent offensive line, if you put Joe Burrow on a team that has a great defense, you might see more winning. Joe Burrow has been the absolute last issue for this Cincinnati Bengals team. In fact, if there was one thing that you would point to as to positive about this Cincinnati Bengals team, it is the play from Joe Burrow. But with that being said, one thing that this season should teach you is, while yes, the saying is it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. That is absolutely true. But one thing that saying does not incorporate, the one thing that saying doesn't emphasize, is how you start could have an effect on how you finish. While you can't win at the starting line, you can't win it at the starting line. You can't win it at the start. You can for damn sure lose it at the start. While this Bengals team has been accustomed at this point to starting off slow, starting season slow. That's just what they do. That's their calling card. Cool. The issue with that is you're essentially taking your controllables out of your hand in the NFL. Joe Burrow is way too good to not be in the playoffs. Jamar Chase, this team, back up. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, way too good to not be in the playoffs. And right now, Thursday night football game essentially put them in a tough situation. While they don't have the toughest schedule, they don't have the easiest schedule. And they essentially have to win out. Meaning they have to essentially go 7-0 and hope that someone like the Steelers, who they have to play twice, can knock off the Ravens. Hopefully that someone like the Chargers, who they also have to play, can knock off the Ravens. You see, this Bengals team shouldn't be in this spot. I know it's any given Sunday, but when you start, 0-3, essentially 1-4, you're essentially dooming yourself at the end. Because it's going to take a miracle now. This was the game. This was the Bengals' essential Super Bowl. Not because it was against the Ravens, but because if they won this game, this is probably the hardest game they had moving forward. They've already lost to the Ravens before, so now they got swept in the season. So if we talk about tiebreakers, they don't have that. Which means that they're essentially going to have to win out. It's not it's not Joe Burrow's fault. Joe Burrow has been the bright light of this. Jamar Chase has been the bright light of this team. But you're looking now, that, in my opinion, that was their Super Bowl. They can ultimately come back and win. Cool. They can ultimately come back and make the playoffs. But what they did at the start is literally having an effect on how they finish and how they need to finish. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.